But yet, somehow, in every life, some rain must fall.
That's right.
It's
That's
life.
right. Absolutely.
It's life.
That's right. Absolutely. It's how you handle it.
That's
the enemy
right.
wants to stop us. Whatever he can do, if you stop, you're giving him a victory. You have to keep going. Do not give him that victory.
Amen.
Keep going, and God will always bring it. The promise is He will always lead us to triumph. It doesn't say everything will look like triumph or everything will feel like triumph, but He'll always lead us to triumph. So that is the key. And usually what I find is when things are most attacking, when it's the worst times, that's when you have to all the more push through, because beyond it is where the greatest victory is. And so we cannot give the enemy victories, and he cannot stop any of us if we don't stop.
That's right.
God will always lead us forward.
Good.
I just had I wasn't planning on saying this, but I'll just say this. The man who who asked me to go into ministry, who I met when I was in college, as I just came to the Lord. He just came to the Lord, Jewish believer named Gary Selman, about 20 years older than me, businessman, evangelist. He's the one who asked me. He had the vision for Beth Israel. He asked me to come. He had a radio show. Oh my goodness! I didn't know you have that radio show around New York City called The Two Nice Jewish Boys.
Is that you?
That's me.
That's
that's me. About 20 years ago.
Rabbi,
about 20 years ago.
Rabbi,
everybody.
That's about 20.
Two nice Jewish boys.
Yeah, the hair was a little bit. Marriage has pushed that in. But the thing is. But he just went to be with the Lord. Really a best friend for 35 years.
Yeah.
And he went to be with the Lord on the day of the Shemitah. And
what?
And it was, we always sound the trumpets on the Feast of Trumpets. We say this is like a rapture drill because we're getting ready to go up. Lord, well, we sounded the trumpet, and he went to be with the Lord within an hour, and the thing is that it's a great victory for him, but boy, everything happening at once, in that way. But, the Lord promises always leads us to triumph. And He never disappoints.
No.
But you have to keep going to get to that triumph. If you stop before that, you may never see it. You have to keep going. And it will always lead us. Yeah.
What do you think on that exact day?
Yeah, it's, a million things. A million
God
things.
always gives you the date, the moment.
There's a lot to,
and speaks to you.
Yeah.
So you have to know somehow God was doing something that is in His will, but boy, it's tough.
And it's victory. Actually, this Gary's Hebrew name was Gedaliah. There's a Gedaliah in the Bible who was a friend to Jeremiah. And it says he went to be with the Lord on, the tradition is he went to be the Lord on the Feast of Trumpets the same exact day, when he was named. God has a reason for everything, but I have never seen God disappoint. The worst times of attacks have always led to the greatest times of victory. When I first came here, I came here when our building was totally flooded. We had no more building for 7 weeks.
Right.
3.5 feet of water over every part of the ministry. It was just when the Harbinger was coming out.
Right.
And I knew, and people were saying, "What's going on?" Well, I said, this is a good sign.
Yes.
Because the enemy does not waste his time.
Right.
And so if you're being besieged by the enemy, it's a good sign. And that's when, right after this was over, came the greatest explosion of the ministry and the Harbinger ever in history. But it's like that. If we want to be people of victory, we cannot avoid the fight. We cannot despise the fight.
Wow.
We have to take it on like David did, say, I'm running to it, God's with me, and whatever's going to happen, I'm going to win in the end.
And everything that's happened, the Harbinger is based on the 9/11 event. And I'll never be able to thank you enough for unveiling the Harbinger to me. All of the, I hear people say, well, Rabbi said we're going to have this happen on this day or this going to happen. And you never said it. I know that because you were very careful. You're not a date setter.
Yeah.
And I know that. But here's the thing. Everything that rabbis taught us is based on biblical days and on biblical events.
Yeah.
And, there's a preacher around here. He makes fun of me all the time now and said, Well, and made fun, not just of me, but made fun of the blood moon. There's so much going on, Rabbi. I know this is a very important show today. I know this with all my heart. And I know that you have a lot to say about
everything.
Everything
Yes.
and what's happening
Yes.
in the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
More has happened in the last year that you've been coming here and in the last month in biblical things.
Yes.
Deal head on with, what's happened and where we are. I think it's very important that we do. First of all, God calls us to be vigilant and calls us to be watchmen in the end times and to warn and to give warning.
Yes.
And if we do not give warning, we are held accountable. And secondly, we're living in the end times. These are days of apostasy. These are dangerous, the Bible says, perilous times of judgment. So we need to warn. It's better to warn, and it's better to be safe than sorry, number one.
Yes.
The other thing is, at the same time, as far as timing is concerned, I've said, you've known this every time I've been on here, I've said we cannot be dogmatic about timing or say something has to happen at a certain time or day. We cannot put God in a box, because when you put God in a box, he gets out. And I've said that again and again and again. Every single time. I mean, so much so it was monotonous, but I said, okay, now I have to give my caution again. And the caution is twofold. One, it could happen at these times, but nothing has to happen at a set time or a set day or even in the parameters of the Shemitah. I've not only here every single time I've said it. That was my one concern with when Steve Strang said, okay, this book. I said, well, this is my one concern. I don't want people focusing on dates. So I will put in the book, here's the principle, but this does not have to happen at this time. So I don't think I could have said it any stronger. So I always caution that, because we cannot, God is above us. He's sovereign. So that's the first thing. Now, and there are people saying, well, there has to be something on September 13th. I said, well, there doesn't have to be. The stock market wasn't open on September 13th. Now, there could have been things, but chances are that wouldn't. The cycle doesn't have to manifest the same way each time. At the same time, having said that, and having said that monotonously, if that's a word, at the same time, we are at a very dangerous convergence then and now, and I believe it is wisdom that we be prepared in case anybody, was thinking about this. If you bought health insurance and then a year goes by and you didn't get deathly sick and you didn't have to have an operation, you don't complain saying, oh, I wasn't deathly sick and so I couldn't use my health insurance. I'm upset. No, you have that insurance. Well, for those who are prepared, you're very much into preparing here at Morningside. For those who are prepared, you are prepared, and you are better off than you would have been, number one. And it's not like health insurance that that's all gone in the year and you have to pay again. You have that. It's preserved. So I believe that what I said about that is, you have to be led by the Lord in those things, but it's wisdom to have essentials on hand. Yes. It is wisdom. For all the things we pay for insurance, it is wisdom to have that. So, it's like the virgins and the oil. They didn't know when it was going to happen, but they had to be ready with that. And those who were ready and those who had the oil were more prepared than when the day came. And of course, the most important preparation is to be right with God, which I've said continuously. But I believe that is wisdom. Now, having said all that, something that was missed by people focusing on one day, and that is this. The most central, predominant template of the Shemitah that is in the book again and again and again is not a day crash, which happened twice, but is specifically this: a rising stock market, bull market, when it comes to the Shemitah, turns around, hits its peak, begins to descend and descend, not over a day, but over months. It's a longer, bigger phenomenon. That is the central template. It happened again and again and again and again. Did this happen in the Shemitah of 2015? The answer is yes, it absolutely has happened. The stock market, which had been rising, bull market for years when the book came out, reaches the Shemitah, May 19th, hits its peak in the Shemitah, turns around, reverses momentum, begins a long-term collapse. I've shared that the pattern of the Shemitah is that the tendency is that towards the end, that's when things get more dramatic. I've said that again, that's general pattern again. As we approach Elul, the month of Elul, heading to Elul 29, what happened to the stock market and around the world is its descent became violent, volatile, dramatically so. Near the conclusion in August, it produced some of the greatest day crashes in stock market history. It produced.
When he tempted Messiah, he used God and the Word of God to just distract Messiah, take him away. You know, you may be filled, it may even be biblical things, but the focus is, it's not God, it doesn't matter. If it's centered on anything but God, you know, we come to the Lord, we tend to be caught up in the Lord. And we go on, there's a tendency in human nature to move away from God. Or we get used to him, or he's not as new anymore in our minds. And you know, here we got saved years ago, but that was fresh, and now it's not as fresh, because everything in the world is fresh at the beginning, and then it gets older. God is the only thing that is not like that. But we don't realize that. I remember, you know, so people look for new things and new doctrines and new. I remember someone who I'd known in the Lord, and he got into a particular doctrine. And I'm not speaking about the doctrine, good or bad, but he got into it, and he was speaking as if he's saying like, well, now he's saved. And I'm thinking, really? I said, you had the Bible before. You had Jesus before. Why was that not enough? I mean, you're speaking as if that was not enough. And he gave me this pile of books. And he said, you have to read it. And I said, wait a minute. Yeah, he said, it's biblical. I said, if it's biblical, you wouldn't need all these books to prove it. If it's biblical, you have the Bible. It's not that God can't use books, but if you need all those books to make your point, you've got a problem. You know, there's no way, you know, and you know, we tend to move from our first love to things, from him to movements, from him to success, from him to money, from him to comfort or marriage, or from him to things about him, from him to doctrinal axes to grind. You know, that's just human nature, and we have to be aware of that, because it drains us of our love for God. Notice something about Martha and Mary. You know, Martha is running all over the place for God, but he doesn't commend her. And Mary's just sitting at his feet. And he says, Martha, Martha, you're so worried about so many things, you're caught up, and only a few things are needed. And then he says, only one thing. He goes from many things to a few to one. And that's how it was with the temple. In the temple, you've got all these things going on. You know, you're outside, a million things, sacrifices all the time, all these things going in. And then say you can get in to the courtyard. Well, then it's a little bit less. Then you get into you open up the golden doors of the temple, and you get into the holy place, and then there's less. Only a few objects in that holy place. And then you go deeper into the Holy of Holies, and there's only one object at the most. You went from many to one. In Zechariah in the kingdom, it says, then the Lord shall be one, and his name shall be one. You see, one of the things, you know, to get to the Holy of Holies, you move from many things to one thing. You know, one thing. You know, it's not that in your life you can deal with a million issues, but your heart can't deal with a million issues. Your heart is to deal with one thing, God and his love. Everything else is to be a flowing from that. We go from many to one. Echad. It said, the Lord said, no one can serve two masters. And that's true. But think about that. No one can serve two masters. And he said, one in Hebrew is echad. No one. If you're going to be one, if you're going to be whole, you can only serve one master. If you serve two masters, you won't be one. You'll be divided. You know, there's so many bandwagons we can get on. There are so many Christian bandwagons we can get on. Or messianic bandwagons. You know, everybody has the bandwagons against this kind of music. This is holy, this is not, which is not in the Bible. I mean, where they go beyond it. There are churches that do not have any music because they believe music is sinful. Then you have those that have music, but it's got to be organ. If it's not organ, it's sinful. Then you have those who have music, but it's not, if it has percussion, it's sinful. But this is not in the Bible. It's just like people get on. They need something else to get onto instead of God. You know, you get newsletters of people who are on bandwagons, and the whole newsletter is tearing apart other ministries. And sometimes they have some things that are right, but a lot of times they just get into tearing apart. Beware of bandwagons, because the direction of bandwagons is not into the Holy of Holies. It can't fit. You have the King James. I'm just giving you, I mean, there's so much. This is just examples. It's not about the issue. It's about the bigger issue. You have the King James bandwagon, meaning King James is a good Bible, but from 1611, you know, there's some things that have changed, but it's a great Bible from that time. But you have the King James only bandwagon. You know, it's a King James, you know, and you know, and I remember a person came to me and you know, came in, visited, and said, it's the King James only. That's the one thing I have, but you're not using the King James. And I said, well, you know, it's not really about the translation. I mean, I said, I'm studying the original Hebrew and the Greek. So, it does, you know, the translation's English. And he said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, the King James is more accurate than the original language. He literally said that to me. I mean, that's like someone saying, my drawing of the sun is more accurate than the sun itself. You know, I remember when somebody's getting into this side issue or a doctrinal thing, I said, listen, keep it simple. Get back to Jesus. And he would get upset. I said, well, you can't just say that. I said, I just said it. Get back to Jesus. Get back to the love of God. Get your eyes on him. You have people, I mean, anything can become an idol, even if it's good or even if it's true or not, it can become an idol. It's not so much always the issue, it's kind of where we place the issue. And there are people who get into, you know, we rejoice in the richness and the fullness of God and all the flavor as we do today. You know, but there are people who get into they say it's Jewishness. No, it's not. That's only a vessel to glorify God. You know, or it's the Torah, that people get so much into the Torah that I'm reading some of their things about it, believers, the law, and they're believing, and I barely see the mention of God in it, or the mention of Jesus or Yeshua in it. And that's not what the Torah is, to lead us to Messiah. And there are things that you can do as long as it's consistent with the Bible, with the New Covenant, that's fine. But don't make that your emphasis. Everything is to be used for him. Everything is about that. You know, we've come, you know, it's like a tour guide, the Torah, that led us to Messiah. And once we have Messiah, we don't focus on the tour guide. We focus on Messiah. We give thanks for the tour guide, but we don't focus on it. You know, I'm not going to go back to the tour guide. I'm going to go to Messiah. Because it doesn't matter what it is. And I'm not saying you can or we are free to do or not do in all these respects, as long as it's consistent, but our focus has to be God. Gifts of the Spirit, that's of God. They are people who say that are not for today. That is just not biblical. But when you make that your focus, the manifestations, do you do this, do you do that, you're already off. You know, it doesn't matter what you do, and you judge others, they're jumping. Do you speak in tongues? Do you know, jumping up and down? Listen, some things are biblical, some things are just not there. Some things there's room, whatever you do, and other things are just not of the Bible. But that's not it either way. You know, there's faith prosperity. The focus often on things, the power and the power of God to give you things. And there's some truth in that, or God wants to bless you, pray with faith. Yes, have faith, but that's not what it's about. It's not about things, it's about God. Issues, problems, petty things. So many things you can get caught up with. You get caught up in cell phones right now. There's a cell phone going on. But we're not going to be distracted. You can be distracted by anything, issues. You know, I mean, listen, even this, forget about doctrines for a second. You get caught up in your issue that you're having with another person, you're getting off. If that's what you're getting caught up, God doesn't want you caught up. It doesn't mean he doesn't want you to deal with it, but he doesn't want you caught up in it. You know, problems, or you're caught up in your own rights or your own grievances, you're already off. Or, hey, you're feeling sorry for yourself right now, you're already off. You're already against the gospel. When you feel sorry for yourself, that is against the gospel. The gospel says you've got no rights. God blessed you though you didn't deserve it. That's the opposite of feeling sorry for yourself. Or you're fighting another person, you're proving yourself, or they never recognized me. Who cares if they recognize you? It's not about being recognized, it's about you recognizing God. You have to sometimes stop and say, where's the Lord in all this? Is it him? Even if it's, you might have all the reasons and all the doctrinal reasons and all the ministry reasons and all the theological reasons, but that doesn't mean anything if your focus is not him. You have to stop. Is it the Lord? Is this really focusing on the Lord? Is it really about him? Get back to the Holy of Holies. You're caught up in the sins of others. You're off. They sinned against me. It's off. You know what? The Bible says in some cases, you have to say this. This is God's servant. You leave God to deal with his servant. I mean, if there's something you have to do and somebody's in trouble, then love will say you'll help them out. You won't be sitting there judging them. If you're sitting there judging them, and that's what you're doing, you're already off. Or you're a bit off. And there's another way we can get away from the Holy of Holies. It's busyness. Even in good busyness can be bad busyness. You're busy, you're running around. You're busy in your work, you're busy in your career, you're busy in your house, you're busy in all these things. You're busy in anything that is second to God. And that's not enough. You're busy even in his work. We are to be busy in his work. We are to be serving him with gladness, but not where it crowds him out. Remember that Miriam and Joseph, there's no record that they ever lost him in Nazareth. No record. Or in Galilee, or in Bethlehem. Those places were not the holy city, but the place they lost him was the holy city, Jerusalem. That's profound. They didn't lose him on a regular day. They lost him on a holy day and a holy place. What does that tell you? Even those who love the Lord, you can lose the Lord in the things of God. And sometimes it will be the things that, for you who love God, sometimes the things of God are going to be the biggest temptation, because you're not going to be tempted by very ungodly things. But even that, and things can be good, but they lost him in the crowd. You can't lose God in the crowd. We often lose him in the crowd of things. Crowded life. And doesn't mean, again, you may be called to do a lot of things for God. You may be very busy, that's fine, but your heart has to be in the one. Judaism is not focused on Moses, even though Moses is a big part, obviously, of the law. Islam is not really, so even according to Islam, not focused on Muhammad, though he's a big part. Buddhism is not really about Buddha. But Christianity is about the Christ. This faith is about Messiah. It's not just about the teachings of Messiah. That's good. It's not just about the doctrines of Messiah. It's Messiah. It's different from every other faith. It's about him. I mean, it's even more than about him. It is him. Because even you could be dwelling about him, and that's maybe like the holy place, but it's not the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is not about him. It is him. It's not about Jesus. It is him. Elijah, he's standing for God, and he's doing great things for God, and he goes up, after this great showdown on Mount Carmel, and he goes down to Mount Sinai, back to God. And Elijah's call for great and mighty things, doing great things, ended the drought, called down fire from heaven, was the man for the hour. And he comes down and he's expecting the Lord, and he says that all these things happen, and this powerful thing, and there's another powerful manifestation, and the shaking and all that. He says, but the Lord wasn't in it. The wind, the Lord wasn't in it. All the shaking, the Lord wasn't in it. And then it says a still small voice, and God was in it. It was just now Elijah and God. Elijah and God. We are called for very great things. God is already doing it. And doing it where we're touching in one way or the other the nation in a big way. That people are even coming from the nation around almost every week from all over the country to be here. Yet in being that, it's kind of like an Elijah call. We have to be all the more guarding of our oneness with God, our intimacy with God, like Elijah. Moses on the mountain said, let me see you, Lord. I want to see your face, Lord. I want to see you. I just want you. I know about the rest, and I know about all the things, and you're going to do all these laws and all, but I want to see your face. Paul said, I determined when I came to you to preach nothing but Messiah. I didn't preach pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. I didn't preach, whether you speak in tongues or not. I didn't preach, a million things about how you should do this and this. I determined to preach just nothing but Messiah and Him crucified. That's it. If it's good enough for Paul, it's good enough for me. There are all sorts of issues, but we have to keep the issue as the issue. Richard Wurmbrand, who was imprisoned for his faith under the communists, he shared the story how the communists who were over him embarked on a campaign to brainwash the prisoners, and one of the things they did is they started putting drugs in their food. And Richard Wurmbrand would always try to memorize scriptures and keep them in prison because he has no Bible. He tried to keep it, and even sermons. Even he tried to memorize his sermons. But now with the drug, he started losing his memory. And finally, the only scripture he could think of was the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day and onward. But as time went on, he couldn't even remember the full Lord's Prayer. And it got to the point where he could only remember our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And then our Father who art in heaven. Finally, he was so in a daze, he could just remember our Father. And then he couldn't even think of words. And he said it was that moment he realized there was nothing else. It was just, but it was gone, and he's panicking. And all says, no, it was just me and God. He couldn't think, there were no words anymore, but he was just with God. There was nothing else but the Holy of Holies, the presence of God. It's beyond words anyway. Paul said, what I want, what I am trying to do in my whole life, my whole goal is that I might know Him. I might know Him. Now, I'm always amazed when I read Paul saying that. Because Paul, if anybody knew God, it was Paul. He wrote more books in the Bible, than anyone. He taught us the New Testament faith. That's what God gave him as the key vessel. And yet he says, I want to know Him. So if Paul could say, I want to know Him, that means we have to say, that's my goal. I want to know Him. If Paul could say that, it means, we don't even know the half of Him. There's so much more. And it's a big problem when we think we got it all down. I got the doctrine. I got saved years ago. I got that. Now I'm doing stuff. We don't even know the half of God. We don't even know the half of His big toe. You know why we have eternity to be with Him? Because that's how long it will take to know God. Forever. Put your focus on knowing Him. There's no end to it. It's like you got this treasure that never stops. It's a well that never stops. But if you go away from it and say, I got it all, and you're going to be going through all sorts of things that are no good for you, and you're missing the treasure that would come to you every day. Paul said, for me to live is Messiah. He didn't say it's about Messiah. He said it is Messiah. Do you understand that? To me to live, life is Messiah. That's profound. Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, happens in secret, happens in the most secret. What it says is that the most important moments of your life will happen in secret. The most life-changing, important things will happen in secret, you and God. The most important. And so if you don't have that secret place every day, you're missing the most important thing in your life. I remember when I began leading Beth Israel, was an outreach, and there always had been before me, always about maybe 35 people, and I was led to do a message at the very beginning about laying the foundation of what we would be. And it turned out that night there was a blizzard, but people showed up, and there was no sound system, there was no anything. We could have sent everybody home. I even gave them that choice, but they wanted to hear the message. And remember, here's the foundation. It's like we were stripped of it. Not like we had much. We didn't have much at all. But we're stripped of even what we had. And the message was that in the end, no matter what we have and no matter what God does with us, we have one thing. We have God in Messiah and we have him crucified. Everything else is clothing. We have God, Messiah on the cross, naked. If we have him and nothing else, that is enough. That is enough. And if we keep that first, God is, I'm sure, going to add all these things to us, and he has. But we even then, and even especially when he's added to us, we have to keep him first, and him only is enough. And that's it. With nothing, we have nothing else, that's enough. And that night, I remember the son of one of our earliest congregants, young son, couldn't control himself. He said, something happened. He's telling his mother, he said, what happened? What happened to you? He said that day, he said, in the sanctuary, Jesus came in and came up to me. And he never said that before, never said that after, never in his life. He remembers that to this day. It happened on the day when we were stripped of anything. I said, the only we have to have is him. You know, no matter what God blesses us with, we have to keep first things first, and he'll keep blessing. That's true with you. He'll keep blessing you if you keep first things first. And in fact, if you don't even focus on the blessings, you focus on God, and he'll bless you. But it has to be enough. Paul said, if I have it, if tomorrow I don't have it, it's okay, I got you, God. You know, that's right, Diana, that's right, Robin. When I was, a few days ago, when I was speaking at 9/11 at Oral Roberts University, and in the broadcast, after I was finished, I went to the airport. Actually, the flight was canceled, and they rescheduled me for like a flight where I had to leave like 4 in the morning from the hotel. And I did that. There was not many people up to do this, or there were not many drivers. Well, the one driver was up, and his name was Nazir, and he had a Middle Eastern accent. And I asked him he said, where are you from? I like that accent. He said, I'm from Iran. And he's from a Muslim home. And we started talking. And he said when he was young, he saw a book with a cross on it. And he brought it to his house because he liked the way it looked. His father saw it and was furious and asked him, what are you doing with that book? He said, I like the way it looks. His father said, it's the devil's book. Don't ever open it up. If you open it up, it will destroy your family. So he kept it closed. He even put a rubber band around it to make sure it stayed closed. Finally, he gave it away to a friend without reading it, and he told his friend, you can have it, just don't ever open it up or it'll destroy your family. The Iranian government was oppressive, and there had been a war, and so he and his wife and his children, Nazir, when he was grown, sought to get out of Iran. And they went to the agency to seek the papers, and they ended up giving permission for his wife to leave and then his children to leave, but refused to give him permission to leave. And he was riding in the bus after they told him, and he was discouraged, and he said to me, he said, I saw the bus door open, and a man entered into the bus, and he was dressed in white, and he had a robe, and he had a beard. And he said, I had no idea who he was. And the man came up to me, and he gave me a piece of paper. And he said, then I looked down, and the piece of paper was gone, the man was gone. And he told his wife, and she didn't see anyone. And she gave him all the reasons to explain away what had happened to him. Said, no, that's crazy. But neither of them had any idea as Muslims. And his wife went on to Turkey with her children. And meanwhile, he kept on trying to get out of Iran. And then something happened. He met an official who was sympathetic to him. And then he turned everything around, and miraculously he got the paper to get out. And he called up his wife, who was on the phone in Turkey. And he told her that he received the paper. It was a miracle. And his Muslim wife began weeping on the phone. And he didn't know why. She said, tonight in my hotel room, I turned on the television, and there was a movie about this man. And when I saw it, I knew immediately from what you told me, it was the man in the bus. He said, the man I was watching was the man you described to me. And this man healed the crippled, and he made blind people see. The man was Jesus. And I said to him, I said, if you can make the blind see and the crippled walk, and you can bring my husband out of Iran. And I prayed to him. And then I fell asleep and I dreamed I was walking in the darkness, and there he was, and he said to me, you have to leave the dark path and come with me now into the light. And as I was walking in the light, in the dream, the phone rang and woke me up, and it was you that he had answered our prayers. And the Muslim family was reunited, came to America, are now following him. And everything else in their life passed away. And that was my taxi driver from Iran. And you know, I know people, you hear the stories you've heard, and you had this here, we had it here, of what his appearance is. He's appearing to Muslims in the Muslim world, miraculously. And I know people who are into their doctrinal boxes, and they've gone on the radio and attacked these people for saying that and all that. And here's this guy in a taxi, and it telling me it was just him, and they had no idea who him was. They just knew he was beautiful, he did everything, and they spent that time finding out who he was. And so it is with our life. I believe that even before most of us who didn't grow up in Christian homes, we who were not saved, he was already touching your life. He was already doing things in your life, and you didn't. It was just him. And then finally, one day, the veil opens, and then you realize it's him. It's who him is. He's the him of our life. In everything we do, it's ultimately about him. When you're good, when you mistreat somebody, you're mistreating him. When you do something good, you're doing good to him. He says, in the end, what you did to the least of them, you did it to me. Everything, David could say, when he sinned and he killed some man and committed adultery, he said, against you only have I sinned. In the end, when the veil is moved, it's just going to be you and him. It was all about you and him. It's all about him. Yom Kippur is about the holiest day on the calendar. Unlike all the rest, it's not about anything else but being with him. And you've got a treasure that is worth more than the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, who knows how much the real thing would be worth if they'd ever found it. How much do you think? Billions? Trillions? I don't know they could even put that on it. And what you have with God is worth more than that. You are richer than the richest person on earth. The richest thing. And your part, the greatest thing you can do in your life, that we can do, is to know him. Get closer in him. Behold him. Know his love. Know what Paul said, the unknowable thing, that we might know what is unknowable, what surpasses knowing. That we could be filled up with the knowledge of him. The holiest moment of your life is just you and him. The holiest place is you and him. The most critical thing will happen with you and him, simply you and him, getting away. And it's a real picture. The journey of the high priest is a real picture of our life, of your life. That we start from the outer things, and then we make our way into the inner things. We start from being filled with all sorts of things going around us, and we're focused on this and that, and we end up just focused on him. That's what your life is to be. The journey of the high priest, away from the shadows and the imitations to get more to the reality. The more it's just him, where you're not even aware of everything else anymore. I mean, when you get to the point you're not even aware of what's going on, you're not even aware of the person next to you, it's not just that you're not even aware of yourself, then you've got it. The Song of Solomon, beautiful picture of God and you. You are the bride. He's the bridegroom of your soul. And she's the bride. She searches for him, looking all over for him. And her soul says, longs for me. My soul longs for the one, have you seen him, my beloved? And then, she's looking around. And at one point, the beloved, him, the bridegroom, says to the bride, oh, my dove. In the clefts of the rocks, in the secret place, there let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is lovely and your face is beautiful. In the secret place. And it says God meets us only really in the secret place of our heart and with him. And it says in the Song of Solomon, he's the same one who says, come away, my beloved. It says, your winter is past, the rains are over and gone, and the time for singing has come. Come, arise, my beloved. Kumi, lach, Kumi, arise, Kumi Dodi, arise, my beloved, and come away with me, and there I will give you my love. Come. In the end, what Yom Kippur says is the end of everything. There's just one thing left. Doesn't matter what people said about you, won't matter. People praised you, doesn't matter. People cursed you, doesn't matter. What they did to you doesn't matter. The only thing that's going to matter is you and him. That's it. And everything you did was to be a gift to him, and everything he did was a gift to you. We each have a day of eternity. One day the veil is going to be removed. It's going to be you and him, eternity. And there's going to be no excuses accepted then. The veil is removed for the saved and the unsaved alike. When this life is over, it's only that. Not you and doctrine and him, not you and the movement and him, not you and your accomplishments and him, not you and what they did to you and him, nothing, you and him. And the point is, that's the way it's going to be in the end, so start living that way now. The key to living, it's you and him now. Everything else you can do, you'll do great and mighty, we'll do great and mighty things. But only if we keep him as him, the one. Clear away everything that is secondary, obstacles, clear away any division, any barrier, any veil, any shame, any guilt, any pride that keeps you from God. And get back to your first love. Simplify your walk. Learn to sit, Lord, see beyond and go beyond the veil. Do everything for your beloved. Receive everything from your beloved. And you worship him here, worship him even more when you're not here. You praise him here, praise him even more in the secret place. You serve him here, serve him even more every day of your life. You and him. Yom Kippur is about a foreshadow of the apocalypse. You read Revelation, apocalypse. You know what apocalypse means? Apocalypsis. You know what it means? It means the removing of the veil. That's what it means. That's why you get the word revelation, reveal, take away the veil. The veil. You know that on the day in a Hebrew marriage, there's a moment where the bride has to remove her veil. And that's what it's about, removing the veil. It's not just, we think of apocalypse. It's about coming to him. We're going to remove our veil as we are, face to face. We're going to stand face to face, but even in the spirit, we can see face to face in the spirit. The day, the Day of Atonement, what's it about? Break up the word. At atonement. At one meant. We are at one with him. What is this all about in the end? Becoming one with God. One with God. And that's what it is. She removes her veil and God receives her. So what's going to matter? The day comes when all veils are removed. What's going to matter in that day? The only thing that's going to matter, what's going to matter then? Make it your center now. As it is written, as the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants, longs after you. Deep calls to deep. You who formed me in my mother's womb, it says, when I awake, you're with me. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I might seek after, that I might dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, to inquire into his temple. A picture, I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than anywhere else in the world, because it's better than a day with the Lord is better than 1,000 places outside. We are passing through, and everything in your life is a veil. Everything's going to pass.